Welcome. Last year of the conference, huh? Had fun so far? Excellent. Awesome. So again, thanks for taking the time to come over to this session. Prithpal Bhogill, I'm part of the Apigee product team, and I'm super excited to be joined on the stage here with Gopika Patel from Global Payments. She will join us a little bit later in the session. And today we are going to talk about how do you really accelerate application development with cloud services. This is actually a topic which has become very important as customers are migrating to the cloud and transitioning to the cloud and using more and more services. So we will walk you through some few things. The first housekeeping thing out here real quick is this year at Next, we have Dory, which is an app that we use internally for questions and answers. So inside of your Google Next app, you'll see a Dory Q&A link. Please feel free to ask any questions out there. There are also 2 microphones. Towards the end of the session, we'll be opening them up for Q&A. So we'll take live questions, and also we'll read questions from the Dory as well. OK, with that, so let's talk a little bit about APIs and digital transformation. You may have heard throughout the conference around how companies are trying to transform digitally. So what does that really mean? What it really means at the end of the day is that they are leveraging APIs as the front and center mechanism of exposing their capabilities to a variety of different stakeholders. These stakeholders could obviously be employees who are using some kind of productivity applications. It could be your end consumers who are using your services to get some benefit. Or it could also be a big partner ecosystem who are really deriving extended value from these products. So these products in the new day and age are nothing but APIs. And so if you look at this picture real quick, it talks about your core systems, such as your core enterprise digital assets, are the ones which have now moved away from a system level or an integration level detail to being an API. Those deliver the connected experiences that are very important in this day and age. So why are we talking about this today? Well, what we are also seeing is as more and more enterprises are becoming API first, they have begun to move to the cloud and are also leveraging a variety of different kind of cloud services. So cloud services are great. They give you the ability to be able to use some capability right away. At the same time, they do require a specific mechanism to interact with them. So on one hand, they do offer you the abilities to be able to innovate faster, but you also need to be able to use them in a more efficient way. So let's quickly break down the anatomy of how you access a cloud service. Now I'm going to use this example for a Google Cloud service in general, but this could very well and equally apply to pretty much any other cloud service. So if you think about a very typical access pattern for any cloud service, or even your own service for that matter of fact, it involves a few key steps. The very first thing you do as an application developer. By the way, how many application developers or developers in the house out here today? Oh, excellent. Excellent. So there'll be a lot more goodness for you to hear about today. So the very first thing as a developer that you do is figure out where are my credentials to that service that I want to access. That's step 1. Then you've got to go manage how you store them. Second, once I have access to those credentials, then usually, most likely, you're going to hit some kind of a token endpoint where you'll exchange that credential for an access token. That token is supposedly going to be time stamped, and which means you have to manage the life cycle of, is the token good? Do I need to refresh it? So on and so forth. And once you do all those 3 steps, finally, you actually make a call to that API that you desire to invoke, which means there's a lot of manual steps. There's a lot of redundancy that you have to account for. It is error-prone. What if you miss a step? And more importantly, this is a common thing which compliance teams and administrators do not like. They don't want developers touching or messing with any credentials. That's a domain they want developers to stay away from. How many developers out here have to work with credentials? Okay. Just keep your hands up, please, for a second. How many out there never get told by a compliance team about anything at all? Are they totally okay with that? If they are, bring your hands down. Okay. So this is a very common problem, right? Compliance is usually behind clean separation of credentials, provisioning, that's all compliance and ops, using certain capabilities, that's developers. So then, let's take a look at how Apigee, which is a full lifecycle API management platform, can really help you develop these APIs by leveraging some of these newer cloud services. So what you see out here within the picture out here is Apigee's API platform, also known as Apigee Edge. It has full-featured capability to have out-of-the-box policies to support your security requirements, traffic management, transformations, so on and so forth. As you start to go up in your API program, you want to ensure that you have enough capabilities to be able to expose your API so they can be consumed easily by developers. And then the analytics give you that clean insight end-to-end, not only from an operational perspective, but also from metrics which cater to different stakeholders, such as are the APIs being used, who's using them, right? So on and so forth. And now extensions is a very useful capability that we added. It went GA October of last year. It was announced at Google Cloud Next in London last year. And today we are pleased to announce some really cool extensions that we have made available to our customers. But because extensions become part of the core platform, you as a developer who's leveraging the Apigee platform can leverage all the abilities and connect to those cloud services very quickly, and more importantly, become more productive in composing your APIs. Those are leveraging some of those cloud services. So as I mentioned, it's all about acceleration, and Apigee Extensions, as we will see them today in a demo, gives you all the capabilities to be able to leverage those cloud services. So what are extensions? We look at them in 3 different ways. So first off, extensions provide a well-vetted framework which gives the ability for our customers to be able to take a policy-based approach in accessing those cloud services. So what that means is, of course, every cloud service is going to have an API endpoint. But what we are talking about here is giving you as developers access to those services using policy-based controls. Number 2, we give you all the capabilities so you can reuse those extensions very rapidly and avoid the error-prone, the redundancy issue that we spoke about. And last but not the least, this is our gateway into providing all the new innovation. So as an example, as customers adopt AI and ML in their APIs, these extensions give you the ability to be able to tap into some of those services very, very quickly. So today, I'm very pleased to announce extensions general availability of these 5 extensions, which take our catalog to a much higher number. So cloud authentication, cloud functions, which give the ability to access protected cloud functions, cloud machine learning engine, BigQuery, and then we have really bumped up our support for data loss prevention extension, which was released last year, but now we've added support for templates. If you have been around in the conference, we did demo some of these extensions during one other session as well. So this brings the total number of extensions to 16, and we haven't just stopped at building extensions only for Google Cloud Services. If you've been attentive, you've heard a lot of focus on hybrid and multi-cloud. So today, we'll actually showcase to you, and we did in another session before as well, that we have gone and built extensions to other cloud services as well. So our customers can leverage the Apigee platform no matter where your workloads are on which cloud provider, you're able to seamlessly access those services as well. OK, with that, if we can switch to the demo, please. Awesome. So in this demonstration, I'm going to walk you through the day in life of an API developer. So this would be the persona or the role who are using the Apigee API platform for building out these APIs, and we'll walk you through how to leverage extensions and use these cloud services to deliver those APIs. So I'm logged into Apigee Edge out here, and this is the interface that I see when I get in. So I'm logged in out here as an API developer, right? In this case, I'm going to be jumping back and forth between the API developer persona and the API administrator persona as well. So first off, I have a requirement to now go build an API and get some employee data. That data happens to be sitting in BigQuery. Traditionally, if I go into Apigee, I can whip up an API proxy. An API proxy is nothing but a very simple construct. It gives you the ability to be able to compose a lot of interactions with many services. You can use a lot of different policies out of the box. So I could very easily, let's say as an example, go into one of these APIs. I'll just look this one up as an example. And assuming the demo gods are with us today, as they should be. So within this API proxy, you can add a bunch of different kinds of policies, right? So I can use traffic management policies, security, mediation policies, and I can also use some extension capabilities as well. So it's a very extensible platform. So using a combination of many of these policies, I can access pretty much any cloud service or any other service that's out there, right? But that's something which we've been doing for a long time. So let's now focus our attention on how does extensions come in and really help that cause. So with that, I'll actually first start with looking at BigQuery, because I'm going to show you how we're going to use the BigQuery extension to get data in and out of BigQuery through Apigee Edge. So in this case, I've switched over to BigQuery, and I have a data set called human resources and a pretty obvious table called employees. In this case, let me run a quick query in BigQuery. And once I get the results out here, assuming you guys can see this, I have about 7 different entries in there. OK? Let me see if I can mess with the resolution a little bit. OK, a little bit better. Right? So this is actual data sitting in there. So now let's go over and see how we can enable that experience within Apigee. So the first thing you do now is you go into this area where we call extensions. So the first step is go into extensions and go add an extension. As you can see, we have extensions to a lot of the services that I just spoke about. You can click on any of these. In this case, you would typically go and click on BigQuery. You give it a name and a description. So again, this is the administrator going and configuring this extension. Once you do that, and for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to use an extension that I've created recently. It's called BQ, or BigQuery Employees. Within this extension, you typically go in and you enter a few different prerequisites. So your GCP project ID, the same GCP project that I was just on, and the service account or the credentials to call BigQuery. So I've already deployed an instance of the extension here, and you can see this is up and running and ready for us to use. So in this case, as an administrator, I come in and I simply configure the extension. I deal with all the credentials, and this is ready to go. So now let's switch over to the API developer persona. I'm out here building an API proxy, and I already built one called employees. In this case, instead of me having to now deal with a bunch of other things, I'm going to use the extension callout policy. So I'll go out here and say extension callout. I will select the extension that I've just deployed, the BQ employees. And now this will present me a list of operations which is already available. So no longer I have to worry about go and reference the API documentation. I have all the methods that I need out here. I can select one of them and add the extension callout policy. It's already added out here. In this case, we'll start with the first use case, which is trying to insert a new record into BigQuery. Okay? So in this case, I'm going to call this flow with an Apigee Edge. And as you can see, it is trying to put something that I sent in the request into the table in BigQuery. So I'll use the trace tool real quick. I'll jump onto a revision 2. And I'm going to Postman, which is a tool that we commonly use to test stuff. So let's click on the insert employee function. So in this case, I have a simple JSON payload. This is what I'm trying to insert into BigQuery. So let's hit send out here. And when I do that, behind the scenes is making a call to the Apigee API proxy, which now leverages the extension. You can see it came back with a 200 OK. So far, so good. So if I go into the trace tool, I can see that it did the right level of security checks, which is what you would expect to do in Apigee. And then it made a call out to BigQuery and actually tried to push this data into a BigQuery table. So actually, let's go and query that. So you should have an ID of 999. So I go out here, run another query. And if this has truly worked, we should see the last entry out there, as you can out here. OK? So again, let's recap what we did. Very quickly, we used an extension which was configured by the administrator. And the API developer simply leveraged that policy and made a call to add data into BigQuery. So then let's go over and run the same thing for yet another use case. So in this case, what I want to do is I also want to run a list method, which also happens to be on the same API proxy. In this case, I'm reusing the same extension, but in this case, I'm calling the list all rows method. So if I run this out here, and I hit send, you can see that if this was to work, it's fetching all the data from BigQuery. Right? Again, I'm leveraging these cloud services, but I'm able to compose my API in a much more quicker way. All right, now let's see if we can use some other capabilities within the extension. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I will switch over to the Develop tab right here, and I will bump this to revision 3, which now puts a limit clause. So in this case, let's make sure I go and deploy this to test. I've just created a new revision of that API proxy where I'm trying to now utilize another feature. So in this case, in the list employees extension callout, you can see I've used a limit clause out here. OK? So this means it should now limit the data coming back from BigQuery. And I can control that from within the extension. So when I go and call this, it should only return me one item back. OK? So far, so good. So now, well, I see a lot of PII information is coming out, but maybe employee data is sensitive, and I don't really want to mess with it. I want to ensure if a developer forgets about this, how do I put in the right controls so this data doesn't go away or doesn't escape the perimeter of the enterprise boundary? So turns out, Google Cloud actually has a first-class extension for that, which is known as the data loss prevention extension. OK? So I'm going to show you an example of this. Again, it's pretty simple. I'm switching over to this console here, which shows you the template support. In this case, you can see that here is the template from DLP. Data loss prevention API has support for templates. In this case, I'm going to use a specific template which will show you how data can be masked coming out of it. In order to do that, I'm going to switch back out here, and I will turn to revision 4, which has that policy already configured, and I will deploy that. While that is deploying, I will showcase another important construct within Apigee. Now, this is something which fosters reuse. Shared flows is a set of reusable policy that I can use and enforce across all different APIs. So within this shared flow, which is something that you can call from an API proxy, I have a few different things. And the first thing, as you may have guessed, it uses the DLP template. It uses the DLP extension and tries to call that same template that we just reviewed very briefly. It will go and apply that onto your payload. OK? So within the API proxy, going back to it for a second, if I click on employees, you can see in revision 4, I'm making a call to this shared flow using a flow callout policy. And the shared flow has the data loss prevention extension configured. So now let's take it for a real quick spin. And now if I was to just run this, it should hopefully mask the data coming out of BigQuery. So once this returns, what's really happening out here is I've just simply taken this API proxy and just added another extension to it called data loss prevention, where it goes, gets data from BigQuery first, because still using that extension, and then takes their information, applies data loss prevention, and then masks the data coming out of it, right? So hopefully that gave you a taste of what the extensions are. I really quickly want to showcase some of the other extensions that we have also built other than the Google Cloud Services. You can see we have extensions to support different cloud providers. They are generally available and out there for you folks to try it out. So with that, if we can switch back to the presentation. And at this point in time, I would like to invite over Gopika Patel from Global Payments.
Thank you, Prithpal. How are we doing, guys? Thursday, last day after lunch, we are all set. All right. OK, guys. And Prithpal, by the way, cool new announcements for the extensions, specifically the DLP one. We might look into using that pretty soon. Right. So, guys, I'm Gopika Patel. I lead enterprise integrations team at Global Payments. Here with me, I have the Global Payments team. Say hi, guys. Right. So what do we do? So my team is responsible for identifying the common shared services needs across the enterprise. We build, design, deploy, support the common shared services across the enterprise. Enterprise integrations is an extension of enterprise architecture responsibilities. And with me, I have, and Ali is going to shoot me. We have Ali Fawaz, who is a Senior Vice President and Chief Enterprise Architect at Global Payments. Say hi, Ali. Right. Global Payments. We are today's innovators of tomorrow's payments and technology solutions. Cool sentence. I got it from my PR guys. But so we are a leading worldwide provider for payment technology and software solutions, driving innovative services to our customers globally. Our technology, services, and employees enables us to deliver broad range of solutions for payment services so that our customer can focus on their businesses efficiently and basically market and use the products across various distributed payment channels. How many of you we have like fintech or financial services audience here? Just raise your hand. Fintech, wow. PCI, we all love it. We have Stacy, our compliance lead here with us. Okay. Some facts and figures for Global Payments. This basically shows the size of our company. We do have over 2.5 million businesses. We support approximately 200,000 new customers or merchants a year, 140 payment methods, 2.5K global sales personnel, 3.5 billion in net revenues, 11,000 employees, 32 countries, pretty spread out globally, 17 billion transactions per year. Of course, customer support 24/7, 30 different languages. So that's Global Payments, that's our size. So I want to talk about how Global Payments leverage Apigee Gateway today. One of the biggest project, if you will, we have is Unified Commerce Platform. We launched it a couple of weeks ago. What is Unified Commerce Platform? So with the Unified Commerce Platform, we plan to deliver the set of APIs which our customers or merchant developers can integrate with. Easy, seamless, easy-to-use integration Simple, hiding the complexity of the back-end services at the gateway. We receive a transaction at the gateway, we mediate it, and transfer it to the appropriate back-end processors, back-end services, and there you go. So these APIs, we also leverage Apigee's developer portal. So our customer developers, internal and external, can go to the developer portal, take a look at this API, test, basically, quote unquote, touch the API, make the test execution calls, which comes to our integration environments, and basically run the test from the portal, and there you go. We have developers now who can use this and code to these APIs from the portal itself. Our plan is to have a full self-service customer base or developer base where we want to eliminate any sort of hand-holding in very near future. So, yep, it says up on the slides, one integration enabling payments worldwide across any channel or device. Let me switch to this one. So this is obviously very high-level architecture of unified commerce platform. We do have various sets of APIs on the gateway, transactions. From the fintech industry, you'll know the transaction or authorization APIs, disputes, reporting, data services, data APIs, providing for the real-time data needs of the customers. We do have various channels or integrations where they can basically call the APIs which connects to the gateway. We have POS devices, many methods, tabloids, iPads, wherever the different payment accepting channels, web browser for e-commerce transactions. The idea over here is simple. We have REST APIs exposed on the gateway, very easy, covering the industry standard for transactions, disputes, reporting, etc. Customers code to it, transaction comes to the gateway. We mediate the transaction into the complex internal services at the gateway, route the transactions to the global payments backend processors. Backend processors go connect to the card brands, their regular business. Response comes back, and the transaction is either authorized or declined. So Apigee Gateway basically gives us a very powerful abstraction layer to hide all the different complexities we have with our processors. Those are complex. Those are huge APIs. Like I said, it mediates the complexity for us. Obviously, we have a whole suite of security layer on top of the gateway. We leverage a whole bunch of security policies for the gateway or off the gateway. So how does this journey begin? Global Payments did have API gateways. We began our journey with Apigee late December 2017. A year in it, we purchased the licenses for US, EU, and AP, giving us the global presence of the API gateway so that we can basically accept the transactions from all around the world, giving us speed and reliability in secure and compliant manner. 55,000 calls in production weekly, and it's growing. This is, remember, we are 1 year in. We had the development, QA, certification, production. We have a bunch of APIs already running in production, and the volume is growing as we speak. We had 100% uptime since we launched, no downtime. And again, increasing adoption across the world, meaning with this geo capability or global presence of the gateway, we now can accept transactions from all the from all the corners of the world. So today, the focus would be, as the focus is on extension and how we can accelerate the development, we at Global Payments do use the stack driver logging extension. Why logging? Why we started with logging? PCI requirements. We have to log every transaction that is hitting the gateway. Specifically now, as we are launching transaction APIs, dispute APIs, all of those, and moving our internal APIs on the gateway as well, every transaction that hit the gateway should be logged. It is in our security and architecture practice in Global Payments. audit requirements. We do those from the fintech industries. We run through PCI compliance audit. We have to show the evidences of the logs. How are we collecting the logs? These logs are then fed into GCP stack driver, where we have configured alerting and monitoring of the logs. We can navigate to the issue faster. All of these logs are getting fed into stack driver. We are alerted. We are monitoring these logs. We can navigate through the logs with different search parameters in the log entry and get to the issue faster in production environment. Consistent log, very important. I'm going to touch on that real soon. Every transaction that hits the gateway is logged in a consistent fashion. Who, where, what, why, how. This is a consistent format now across every API we have. Traceability, of course, right? We have a full traceability by capturing these parameters of who, where, what, and how. So this is how we started with. We started with logging. We had to log every transaction coming the gateway. So this is how our Apigee flow looked without Apigee extensions. You create the KVMs, assign the project ID, log ID, use the variables, generate GCP tokens, use the private key, cache it, and connect to the GCP project, invoke the stack driver service, log it asynchronously behind the scenes. And this, if it hits, there you go. And this is how it is after applying the extensions. 2 steps. You form the log message, do an extension callout to the stack driver extension that we have configured via our org admins. That's it. Now, the way we use this extension is this extension is created in a shared flow and is implemented at a flow hook level. That means that any new proxy I'm putting on the gateway, I do not have to worry whether it is logging or not logging, because, as you know, if it is in a flow hook, that is going to be executed. That's it. So now, any proxy, whether the developer remembers to add log, add extensions, use extensions, regardless, every transaction is now getting logged. This has helped us tremendously in delivering the proxies in a right, compliant manner. I'm logging any proxy that I put on the gateway. In fact, a couple of minutes ago, we just added one proxy, which was like a high-time priority for us in matter of hours. That's it. Our proxy is out there in the dev environment, and very soon it will make its way to the higher environments of QA, certification, prod, and so. So we do look forward to use more extensions, as now we have more announcements from Apigee. DLP is definitely a cool one, Prithpal. We definitely want to look at that. So we will be using or looking into using more extensions at the platform. Benefits. So thanks.
That was a very powerful use case. No, let's stay up here.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing the story, Gopika. I thought you walked us through how you just very early on in your journey and are just getting started. And I'm pretty sure you guys are going to hit some very high volumes very soon. And we are prepared to ensure that you folks scale with your platform by leveraging Apigee. And thanks for walking us through why logging has become kind of this new money or currency that we talk about.
Yep.
Because from a compliance perspective, this becomes super important. So just wanted to kind of summarize. We saw a lot of things happening today. We spoke about how do you accelerate development of these APIs using cloud services. We also looked at some very routine ways of doing that from the platform, as you showcased with your, that comparison was pretty awesome, by the way, right? You can still use the platform. It's completely extensible to do things like log into Stackdriver as an example. But then you also saw how extensions were able to very quickly compartmentalize them and make it a one-two show, right?
Yep.
The administrators go and configure it, and the developers use policy-based controls. So we were just talking about this before we came up as to some of the new extensions. I think the DLP extension, as you mentioned, especially with the template support, is becoming very, very important for customers who are worried about data security. And the last piece that you touched on, I want to re-echo. Gopika used a term called flow hook. So one thing which is super important to understand is compliance is not an option. A developer may be very good at heart and may remember to do all the right things, such as putting in all those policies. But what if they forget? Ultimately, the responsibility is with the program to ensure that there is compliance. So flow hook is a mechanism within the platform where you can use a shared flow, the one that I called from within my API proxy. The same shared flow can be configured at an environment level. So it automatically applies any policies out there for all API traffic going through that environment, which means from a compliance perspective, you can just add a shared flow with the extension for DLP, which is what we demonstrated.
Yep.
And you are using Stackdriver log in such a way
Yep.
As well. And the last thing to add to that is we've also, with this announcement, now provide support for a post-client flow. So that means typically a logging is a mechanism which is important, but you also don't want it to come in the way of processing that API call. So you can now use the shared flow and that policy, more importantly, in a post-client flow, which means it can be done truly asynchronously.
Right.
So recapping that, first-class, extensible, self-service approach to connect to cloud services using these pre-built extensions very rapidly. Connect to any service. We've already built 16 different extensions that you saw, 12 to different Google Cloud services, and some to other providers as well. And we definitely plan to continue growing the catalog extensions. The other thing that we're working on today is the same framework and the same development methodology that we, as the Apigee team, are using to build these extensions. We are planning on opening up that framework to our own customers. So then you can take that framework, build your own extensions to your own services, and reuse them within the enterprise, just like you can from the pre-built extensions. OK, awesome. Thanks, everybody, for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Enjoy the rest of your day.